Afternoon. We're here today with Regardt Muller. Regardt is one of my old students. Good afternoon, Regardt.
Hi, Tines.
Regardt, I want to talk to you about your experience of becoming an engineer. What brought you to engineering?
For me, it's probably also been a thing from childhood, just wanting to know how things work. And I was lucky to have a few very good teachers in high school. I'd say that really piqued my interest in science and technology at the same time. And technology has always been something that I want to know more about. What's the newest thing that's happening? And from the information that I could get out of like a small town school and the type of internet access and things that we had at that point, engineering just felt like the most obvious choice for going further with that type of interest. So that led me to going in the engineering route, but deciding on which way to go, that's a bit of a different story, because I wasn't sure even after getting material about the different courses, exactly which one I want to go with. So I actually started my first year as a E&E, electronic engineering student. And after the first year, I felt like I still missed this, the mechanical side of things, because not just the electronics and the coding that interest me, it's also the mechanical, how things work out, what's the best way to design things. And that led me to rather try mechanical engineering in my second year. And by the end of my second year, again, something was missing, and I felt the electronic things getting to do with anything that, not just the mechanical side, but now again I was missing the electronic part of it. So I found out there's still an option for me after my second year, without any loss of years, to start mechatronic engineering, and that's what finally led to going the route of mechatronic engineering in the third year.
That is a very interesting path to take, Regardt. And then you've changed over to electrical and electronic again for your master's degree, which is an interesting flip-flop between the two, if you want. So one question that we get very often is, what is in essence the difference between the two degrees? And our typical normal answer is that if you prefer to work with stuff that is controlled, you do mechatronic, and if you want to focus on the way in which those things are controlled, more on the algorithms and the electronics part of it, then electronics is the answer. But from your perspective, what would you see as the fundamental difference between the two?
It's kind of a two-sided thing. One is from the type of education you're getting at let's say the Stellenbosch course that I followed. It's mechatronic engineering is basically a mechanical course, or 3/4 mechanical course and 1/4 electronic course, which is it gives you a good balance of not just the mechanics, but also knowing a bit of what, like you said there, how you control the electronics as well, or how you control something. But then the other side of it is also what you would like to end up doing with that, because the industry you go into determines how you're going to use that in education. So what I've seen a lot just in my company is a lot of guys that are electronic engineers would like to end up working with firmware or some sort of programming, and in that sense I think you would probably get a lot more out of focusing on electronic engineering, where we go in depth into courses like that. And I was very lucky to end up in a company where I literally have freedom to do a lot on both sides: mechanical design, electronic design, some programming. So for me it was a good fit to not have to pin down what I want to do from the start. But saying that, I don't think it's a bad thing if you have a clear idea of what you want to do and do, to rather go for the electronic engineering if you know what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Maybe just a few comments. Something that I thought of while you were speaking. It's almost as if electronics to a mechatronic engineer is a tool. It's something that you use, but you don't necessarily understand very well. And in the same way, for a robotic engineer, which is a subsection of electrical and electronic engineer, mechanics and the mechanisms behind the mechanics is almost just a tool that you use while you have a proper understanding of the electronics. And I'm just thinking back to the project you did under me. In that project, I remember some of the issues that you ran into were things like filtering, for example, the hardcore electronics and processing, which is more of an E&E aspect. But the stuff that I really struggle with as an E&E engineer is exactly how much force I can apply, where should I apply force, what type of gears there are, etc. So I think that really speaks to it. Thanks, Regardt.
In this arena, mechanical design, I can pretty much take on by myself at this point, but definitely still in the electronic design side, I do need advice a lot of the time because I don't have that extensive training in how electronic design, the in-depth practices of that, like you mentioned, like filtering or doing a design that's EMI sensitive or that type of thing. And yeah, so there's still a learning curve for me there. And just to go further, I'd say I also get involved in a bit of programming sometimes, or our production facility. We have a lot of test jigs and testing equipment that I also help design, and those need firmware or software written for it to be able to automate our testing as much as possible.
Could you also tell me what type of job do you do at the moment? So given your strange walk in life, what type of things do you do?
So I work for a company where my title is basically a mechatronic design engineer. We design, develop, and produce sensors, or let's say condition monitoring devices for the industrial environment. And these devices need to be very robust for the environments they need to work in. So there's a big ask on, let's start on the mechanical side for the, let's say, enclosures that these devices go into to be very robust and to be able to work in environments that might have explosive atmospheres. So that requires quite a lot of technicality on that side, which I get to be involved in the design of these enclosures, types of things. At the same time, we need electronics that fit into these. A lot of the times there's a size constraint in what we can do.
Could you also tell me, maybe as a final point, what was your biggest revelation when you entered the job market?
That you know nothing. Yeah, like it doesn't matter how well you did in university. There's still very much like in-depth knowledge of every industry that you get into that you can't possibly have before you start, and you have to suck it up and start learning from whoever's there that can show you around. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to kind of start a path that way, because you also it's a lot more rewarding to get to a point after a few years where you can say, I've learned a lot and I can actually apply that. If I can add a last point, I know this is also obviously aimed at people still, going into the direction of university, and if you decide on Stellenbosch University, I can only speak of what I experienced there. I'd just like to mention that every person doing that should try to grab every opportunity that they actually get access to in a place like that, because you don't realize that when you're in it, only when you get into a job afterwards, or into like a specific company where you've got a day-to-day thing that you're doing, what you actually had access to in an environment like Stellenbosch. It's an incredible environment of shared knowledge, access to massive companies, or just, entities that are willing to come to the table and actually provide you with tools, or even, do headhunting or whatever. So be on the lookout for all those opportunities that are out there, because there are a lot.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Brilliant. Regardt, it's lovely talking to you, catching up with you again. Wishing you all the best, and I hope we speak again soon.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.